Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and the winner for the poll for the latest video is on whether or not the EU has given up on the UK over Brexit. But first, before I begin, I do have to give a shout out to a very eagle-eyed observer. I retweeted the Brexit cat meme yesterday, and someone called Jonah spotted something which I didn't. They drew my attention to the flag, asking if it was intended, and I looked closely. I thought, the flag is the old Union flag from like a couple of centuries ago, before the cross of St. Patrick was added. So maybe that is an intended subliminal message there. Don't know. But anyway, back to the main topic at hand. So when it comes to I think in the EU Parliament and the EU Council, there's certainly still the impression that they would prefer it if we just called a new referendum, which leads to the cancellation of Brexit altogether. However, many people get the impression that it's largely Donald Tusk keeping everyone's spirits up over that. For example, with the result of the votes yesterday, where most of the votes were going towards realistic options, in Brussels, according to reporters in Brussels, they weren't really buoyed up about it because we still aren't deciding on something. However, when it comes to the populations of the EU, I gather that the mood is very different. Just as with the population of the UK, citizens of EU countries largely base their views on politics purely in terms of politics. Much less emphasis is placed on legal or economic matters. People may talk about these things, but without necessarily knowing the full implications. It's a difficult job. That's why we have experts for it. And so it's easy to downplay those issues in people's minds. So I asked people to send me the view from the non-UK parts of the EU, and I was inundated. I didn't really think that one through. So sorry to everyone I didn't manage to get back to. But there were some very interesting reports about the mood of people about all the messing about that we're currently putting you through. Sorry about that again. Now, it's easy for EU citizens to think that their populations are smarter or better informed because, for example, they know that being in the EU is better and they see the nonsense that UK citizens seem to believe. But it is largely the same everywhere to a certain extent. Polls indicate that EU citizens don't think that their economies will be hit by Brexit. They will. Some will be very badly hit. It's just not as badly as the UK. But the popular belief suggests otherwise. Probably buoyed by the sensible no-deal contingencies that the EU have implemented. That may play part of it. In fact, 12% in these polls at the end of last month suggested that the EU would be better off. Now, that is to gainsay the expert international economic assessments just as badly as citizens in the UK do. And in this environment, many in Europe are no longer simply wishing that the British would make our bloody minds up, but actually just go. Just go. In fact, there may even be an increasing number of the EU population not wanting to allow any further extensions, even if we do agree a course of action that leads to cancelling Brexit. Now, politically, you could argue there are a few advantages to this. So the first one is it does mean that the UK no longer acts as a brake on further reform. Now, there are pros and cons to that. The UK certainly doesn't buy into a lot of the political aims of the EU. That is the reason de Gaulle refused our entry earlier on in the history of the EC, and the reason why we've always really been outsiders in the EC and then later the EU. This is a problem when you're trying to move towards greater European integration. However, it has been noted that the UK has played a useful role as a devil's advocate. When other major powers such as France and Germany have had ideas to push the organisation forward, the UK has been very effective in pointing out some of the stumbling blocks. Now, critical evaluation of any plan is essential, and that would then be missing from the process. It should also be borne in mind that many of the features of the EU that the British population are frankly moaning about were actually suggestions from the UK government. Now, of course, the reason the UK plays devil's advocate on those matters is it's not because we're better at critically evaluating things. It is from that position of resistance to further alignment. And when you're opposed to something, it's much easier to see the pitfalls. But it still served a useful purpose nonetheless. Some have described it as the UK being very good to holding up a mirror to the EU so it can see what it's really aiming to do, but not being very good at holding up the mirror to itself, which is certainly true. But without the UK, the European project may be able to pick up speed again, or so many might imagine. I do wonder if some of the newer nations to join the EU, who also did so for economic reasons, just like the UK, might not act as a brake to it anyway. The nations to the east in particular seem to be more reluctant about further integration and alignment, or even the current level. Second advantage is having someone leave the EU is basically the only way to prove to doubters what this actually entails. The EU has already scored some big points by showing how chaotic the attempts to leave are. They've also shown that they don't back down at the last moment. But having a nation go through it and suffer from it, and preferably to beg to come back pretty soon, is the only thing that will keep those who are banging on about nationalism quiet for the future. And if there's a significant delay between begging to come back in and actually being able to do so, all to the better. It's funny that Brexiteers argue that the benefits of Brexit are short-term pain for long-term gain, but it may actually be the EU that experiences that. And the third thing is there is a fear that the UK might cancel Brexit, but then restart the whole process again once, the conditions exist for it. Now, although the judgment, when this went to court and the ECJ, and they said, well, yeah, they could unilaterally withdraw. But that judgment said that you can't just withdraw and then restart it, that we'd have to withdraw in good faith. Withdraw from Article 50, that is, not the EU. I mean, we would be doing. The government at the time that did that would genuinely not be wanting to go through this again. But what about a government 5 or 10 years later? Be a different set of people, different set of priorities. So there's that fear. Now, from the point of view of EU citizens, surely better just to get it over with, let lessons be learned, maybe even change the legislation for members leaving to avoid a lot of this mess. Now, for myself, I would wonder if maybe Article 50 shouldn't have been changed to insist that the leaving members' parliament has to vote in favour of a plan before triggering the countdown. It wouldn't solve the problem because, different MPs could change their mind and vote another way, but it would at least help because all those indicative votes we had yesterday, if that would have been done before the process, that would have helped. So if the UK doesn't sort itself out quickly, we may find ourselves losing what remains of the goodwill throughout the rest of the EU. Although fortunately, on that point, we will have to make a decision in 2 weeks, because if we're not prepared to take part in the European elections, then we will be out at that point. If we are prepared to take part in those elections, then although nothing further will be decided, the momentum towards remaining in the EU will at that point surely be unstoppable. And I say that because the only way that set of events would occur is if the arch Brexiteers in Parliament and the media are well and truly told to shut the hell up. But anyway, that's my view on that one. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, don't forget to click the like button, subscribe for further content, click the bell notification as well. There will be another poll going up as well for you to vote for, probably for Saturday. Until next time, I'll see you later.